It was supposed to be a quiet afternoon. Staff Sergeant Elijah Brooks had just wrapped up a 12-hour shift with the National Guard. Still in uniform, pressed, boots shined, nameplate polished, he stopped at a small gas station on the edge of town to grab a cold drink. The sun was high, heat waves dancing off the pavement, and all he wanted was water and 5 minutes of peace. He nodded politely at the cashier, picked up a bottle and stood in line like everyone else. There was nothing unusual about him, except that he was black, proud, and wearing the uniform of a U.S. serviceman. Then everything changed. 2 police cruisers swerved into the parking lot. Sirens blared for a second, then cut off. Red and blue lights flashed against the glass. The door flew open, and in stormed 2 white officers, Officer Darren Cole, tall, square-jawed, tense, and Officer Rick Landon, older, thicker around the waist, face locked in a permanent sneer. "Everyone stay right where you are," Cole barked, hand hovering near his holstered weapon. Landon's eyes locked onto Elijah immediately. "You!" he shouted, pointing. "Hands where I can see 'em." Confused, Elijah raised both hands slowly. "What's the issue, sir?" he asked calmly. Landon approached, face twisted with suspicion. "You're under investigation for impersonating a military officer." Elijah blinked. "I am a military officer." But they weren't listening. Cole grabbed one wrist, Landon the other. They twisted his arms behind his back, ignoring the badges on his chest. The bottle of water dropped and rolled across the floor. Within seconds, Elijah was being dragged out in full uniform, handcuffed like a criminal. Inside, the gas station went silent. A child whispered, "But he's wearing a uniform." Outside, phones started recording. But Elijah? He stayed calm. He knew one thing the officers didn't. He had a name in his phone that would change everything. As the hot concrete pressed into Elijah's knees, he didn't flinch. His wrists stung from the cuffs, but his eyes never left the horizon. Traffic slowed. Bystanders began to gather. Cameras were out, some live streaming, others quietly capturing the injustice unfolding. Officer Landon stood smugly nearby, arms crossed, his sunglasses reflecting the growing crowd. Officer Cole paced back and forth, still gripping his belt like he was waiting for Elijah to make the wrong move. "You think you're slick, huh?" Landon muttered, kneeling beside Elijah. "Nice costume, medals and all. Bet you got 'em off eBay." Elijah turned his head slowly. "I earned every single one," he said. His voice was calm, but it carried weight. "You got any ID to prove it?" Cole asked, not really expecting an answer. "In my back pocket," Elijah replied. Landon didn't check, he just scoffed. "Yeah, sure." From the sidewalk, a woman shouted, "Why are y'all arresting him? He's a soldier." But the officers ignored her. They weren't interested in truth, they were interested in control. Elijah tilted his head to the side and said, "I'd like to make one phone call." Cole chuckled. "This ain't TV, buddy. You'll get a phone call when we're done booking you." But Landon, sensing the crowd growing uneasy, motioned with his hand. "Let him call. What's he gonna do, call the president?" Elijah didn't answer. He shifted slightly and, still handcuffed, pulled his phone from his pocket. With practiced ease, he used his knuckles to unlock it and tapped on a single contact. The phone rang twice. Then a deep, steady voice answered. "Colonel Abrams speaking." Elijah took a breath. "Sir, this is Staff Sergeant Brooks. I've been detained. They're accusing me of impersonating military personnel." A pause. Then, calm but commanding, "Stay where you are. I'm coming." Elijah looked up at the officers and said quietly, "You just made the biggest mistake of your careers." They laughed. They wouldn't be laughing much longer. The laughter didn't last. For the next few minutes, Officers Landon and Cole postured with smug confidence, pacing near the handcuffed soldier, like they had already written the final page of the story. Elijah knelt on the sidewalk, sweat dripping down his temple, his uniform dusted from the pavement. But his pride, his dignity, remained untouched. He didn't speak again. He didn't need to. Inside the gas station, the cashier whispered to a customer, "That guy's a real soldier. I saw him here last week in uniform. Same name tag, everything." Outside, the murmurs among the crowd grew louder. More phones came out. One by one, people began filming from different angles. Why are they treating him like that? Can they do that to someone in uniform? A boy around 10 years old, holding his dad's hand, pointed and said, "Daddy, that man's a hero, right? Why are they arresting him?" The father didn't answer, just pulled out his own phone and started recording. Then everything shifted. From the end of the street, 3 sleek black SUVs appeared. No sirens, no lights, just quiet presence, moving with authority. The vehicles pulled up with precision, doors opened in unison, and out stepped 5 individuals, each in a crisp military uniform, badges glinting in the sun. The lead vehicle's back door opened slowly, and out came a towering figure in decorated formal wear, Colonel David Abrams. He was a man who didn't need to raise his voice to be heard. His chest was a display of valor, combat ribbons, commendations, and decades of earned respect. The moment he stepped out, the energy shifted, the onlookers stepped back. The officers straightened up instinctively. Elijah lifted his head ever so slightly, eyes meeting his commanding officers with steady calm. Colonel Abrams looked at the scene, Elijah on his knees, cuffed, two officers standing over him with blank faces, and he didn't blink. He walked forward without a word. The reckoning had arrived. Colonel David Abrams walked with purpose, boots landing heavy on the pavement, each step radiating control. The crowd parted like water. No one spoke. No one needed to. You could feel it in the air, something serious was about to unfold. The colonel's eyes scanned the situation like a battlefield. He saw the cuffs on Elijah's wrists, the sweat on his brow, the dust on his knees. Then he turned to the officers, both now suddenly stiff, unsure, clearly feeling the weight of the moment. "Which one of you is in charge?" Abrams asked, voice like steel. Officer Cole stepped forward nervously. "That would be me, sir." Abrams narrowed his gaze. "And your name?" "Officer Darren Cole." Abrams turned slightly. "And you?" "Rick Landon, sir," the other replied, clearing his throat. The colonel didn't return the courtesy of calling them officers again. "I'm Colonel David Abrams. That man you handcuffed is Staff Sergeant Elijah Brooks. He served 3 overseas tours, led rescue efforts after Hurricane Marion, and trained under my command for the last 6 years." His voice cut through the tension like a blade. "So I'll ask you clearly, did either of you confirm his identity before restraining him?" Cole's mouth opened, but no words came. Landon tried to speak. We had a report of someone impersonating military. Did you ask for his ID?" "No, sir." "Did you ask for his name, rank, or division?" Silence. Abrams turned to one of his men and nodded. A military legal officer stepped forward and handed over a sealed folder. "You are both under formal federal investigation for unlawful detention, racial profiling, and violating the rights of a serving U.S. soldier," the officer announced. The crowd gasped. "Effective immediately," Abrams continued. "You are relieved of duty pending further review. Hand over your weapons, radios, and badges." "But this is a misunderstanding," Cole blurted out. "No," Abrams said coldly. "The only misunderstanding was thinking your badge gave you the right to disgrace this uniform." Then he turned to Elijah and spoke with quiet force. "Let's get you up, Sergeant. You've earned better than this." Colonel Abrams knelt beside Elijah with the kind of respect most people only reserved for those who'd been through fire. "You all right, Sergeant?" he asked. Elijah nodded once. "Yes, sir. Just waiting for the storm to pass." Abrams gave a small nod of approval, then stood and faced the officers again. "Remove his cuffs. Now." With shaking hands, Officer Landon stepped forward. The keys jingled as he struggled with the lock. The tension was thick enough to slice with a knife. Finally the cuffs clicked open, and Elijah rubbed his wrists, his skin marked but his spirit intact. He stood slowly, brushing the dust off his uniform with quiet dignity. The crowd watching erupted in applause. A woman near the front shouted, "That's what justice looks like!" Someone else yelled, "Say his name, Sergeant Brooks!" Elijah didn't bask in it. He simply nodded to the crowd and stood beside Colonel Abrams, his back straight and his eyes level. The officers hesitated, unsure what to do next. Abrams didn't leave room for confusion. "Hand over your badges. Weapons too," he repeated. Landon and Cole looked at each other, their confidence completely shattered. One by one they obeyed. The radios came off first, then the service pistols. And finally their badges, once symbols of authority, now tarnished by the weight of their actions. Abrams handed the equipment over to the legal officer, who catalogued everything without a word. "This isn't over," Abrams added, looking each man in the eye. "The Department of Defense will be pressing for full accountability. You didn't just disrespect a man today. You disrespected the entire uniformed service of this country." Then he turned to the crowd. "Let this be clear," he said. "Discrimination has no place under the American flag, not against citizens, and certainly not against those who wear the cloth of this nation." Elijah stood tall beside him. The soldier who had knelt in silence now stood in strength. By nightfall, the video had already gone viral. Multiple angles captured the entire incident, from the moment Sergeant Elijah Brooks was wrongfully handcuffed, to the powerful arrival of Colonel Abrams and the public discipline of the two officers. Footage flooded TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, each post sparking outrage and admiration in equal measure. The hashtag Salute Sergeant Brooks started trending globally within hours. People couldn't believe what they were watching: a soldier in uniform, treated like a criminal. And then, justice, swift and undeniable, served right there on the street. "Damn, that colonel walked up like a boss and shut it down," one user tweeted. Another wrote, "We need more leaders like Abrams. That man didn't raise his voice once, but the world heard him loud and clear." Within 24 hours, the video had over 8 million views across platforms. News anchors replayed the clip frame by frame. Analysts debated the implications of the incident. Civil rights advocates praised the professionalism of Sergeant Brooks. Veterans from every branch came forward, expressing both anger and solidarity. One retired Marine posted, "That could have been me. Uniform or not, black men still get profiled. Thank God that soldier kept his head, and that someone powerful had his back." Elijah remained quiet through it all. He wasn't interested in fame. He didn't ask for headlines. But even as he sat at home that evening, drinking water from the same gas station bottle he'd dropped earlier, his phone buzzed non-stop. Messages from strangers, fellow soldiers, even old high school teachers. Then came the call that truly shook him. It was from the mayor's office. They weren't just apologizing, they were planning a press conference, with him at the center. For Elijah, the moment wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. And now, the whole country was listening. City Hall hadn't seen this much attention in years. Cameras lined the front steps. Reporters jostled for the best angles. Protesters, veterans, students, and families stood side by side in the square, holding signs that read, "Justice for Sergeant Brooks, respect the uniform, and we salute you, Elijah." Inside, the press conference room was packed. Every local and national network had a representative present. At exactly 10 a.m., Mayor Evelyn Carter stepped up to the podium, her expression somber, her voice steady. "I stand before you today not just as the mayor of this city, but as a citizen who was deeply disturbed by what happened to Staff Sergeant Elijah Brooks," she began. Elijah sat in the front row, dressed in full uniform, his boots polished, his ribbons shining under the lights. His posture was straight, face calm, but his eyes revealed everything: pain, strength, and quiet pride. "What occurred outside that gas station was a failure," the mayor continued. "A failure in judgment, a failure in training, and a failure in basic human decency." She took a breath. "I am here to say 3 words our community needs to hear: we are sorry." Cameras flashed. Applause erupted outside the building. Mayor Carter wasn't done. "Effective immediately, Officers Darren Cole and Rick Landon have been terminated. Not placed on leave. Not transferred. Fired." The words echoed like thunder. "And further," she added, "our city will launch a full review of racial bias within our police department. Sergeant Brooks will assist in developing new sensitivity and veteran engagement protocols. Because this can't happen again." Elijah was invited to the podium. He didn't prepare a speech. He didn't need one. He simply looked out at the crowd and said, "I didn't stand up for attention. I stood up because I had to. For every soldier, every black man, and every American who's tired of being questioned for just existing." The room went silent. Then the applause was deafening. 2 weeks after the press conference, Elijah Brooks stood in front of a very different crowd, one that looked at him not with suspicion but with respect. He had been invited to speak at the city's police training academy. The auditorium was filled with cadets in crisp uniforms, most of them young, nervous, eager to earn their badges. They'd all seen the viral video. Some had watched it a dozen times. Now the man from that video, the soldier who had been handcuffed and humiliated but held his ground, was about to teach them something no textbook ever could. Elijah didn't walk in with a PowerPoint or notes. He walked in with his story. "I didn't come here to point fingers," he began, standing alone on the stage. "I came to offer perspective." The room was silent. Every eye was on him. "I wore my uniform that day because I'm proud to serve. But it didn't protect me from bias. It didn't stop 2 officers from assuming I was a fraud before they even asked my name." He paced slowly, his voice calm but firm. "Here's what I need you to understand. The badge on your chest gives you power, but it doesn't give you the right to ignore someone's dignity, especially someone who's given their life to protect yours." A few cadets looked down, ashamed. Others nodded in deep thought. "One question: before you draw your weapon, before you snap on cuffs, before you decide who someone is, ask yourself, do I know the truth or am I assuming it?" The room remained still, and then, as if on cue, applause began, soft at first, then growing louder. Some cadets stood. A few had tears in their eyes. Elijah wasn't just a guest speaker that day. He became a mirror for every future officer in that room. A reflection of what could happen when prejudice goes unchecked, and what strength looks like when it stands its ground. After his speech at the academy, Sergeant Elijah Brooks stepped outside into the afternoon sun, feeling lighter than he had in weeks. But before he could make it to his car, a young man in uniform approached him. He looked no older than 22, still fresh-faced, with Cadet Thomas stitched on his training shirt. "Sir," the cadet said, standing at attention, "may I speak with you?" Elijah nodded. "At ease. What's on your mind?" Cadet Thomas hesitated, then spoke with a cracked voice. "I joined the academy because I wanted to protect people like you, like us. But when I saw that video I questioned whether I made the right choice." Elijah placed a hand on his shoulder. "You did," he said, "but now you know why you have to do it right." Thomas blinked back tears. "Thank you, sir." Moments like that weren't rare in the days that followed. Elijah received hundreds of messages from officers across the country, black, white, Latino, Asian, many of whom admitted they'd never truly understood how deep racial bias could go, even within the system they served. One letter stood out. It was from a white police sergeant in Texas who wrote, "Greater than after watching what happened to you, I sat my whole team down and showed them the footage. We talked for 2 hours, some cried, some got angry, but none of us walked out of that room the same. You made us better." Elijah realized something. This wasn't just about justice anymore. It was about change, real change. He wasn't just a victim who had survived injustice. He was now a symbol of accountability, of dignity under pressure, and of what it means to wear a uniform with honor even when others don't. The fight wasn't over. But now, Elijah wasn't fighting alone. It was a quiet Sunday morning when Elijah Brooks returned to the same gas station where everything had started. The sun peeked over the rooftops, casting long shadows across the lot. The once infamous sidewalk, where he had been handcuffed in full uniform, was now marked by a small plaque. It read, "Here stood Staff Sergeant Elijah Brooks, an American soldier, unjustly detained but never broken, a reminder that justice begins with courage." Elijah stared at it for a long time, not out of pride, but out of reflection. So much had changed since that day. The officers who had wronged him were gone from the force. The police department had undergone reforms. A new training program, partially written by Elijah himself, was now standard for all recruits. The mayor had honored him with the city's Medal of Integrity. But the biggest change? The way people looked at him, and people like him, no longer with suspicion, but with respect. As he stood outside the store, the cashier from that day, an older man named Mr. Javed, stepped out and handed him a bottle of water. "On the house, Sergeant?" he said, smiling warmly. Elijah laughed. "Thanks. I think I earned this one." A group of kids on bikes rode past, waving. One of them shouted, "You're the guy from the video, you're a hero." Elijah waved back, humbled. He didn't set out to become a symbol, he just wanted fairness. But his calm strength, his refusal to lash out, and his commitment to truth had echoed far beyond that parking lot. That day, he reminded the country of something simple but powerful. Respect isn't earned by a badge or a gun, it's earned by character. And no amount of bias can break a man who knows who he is. Elijah didn't just win justice for himself, he lit a torch for everyone who ever felt unseen, and made sure the world couldn't look away again. The uniform didn't define him. His courage did.